The last part is really the most important part, is if you're making independent choices that your settlement layer is not giving you. So if you already have all of the capabilities of what you need within the, say you're building on the L2 because you don't want ETH gas fees and congestion, so you build on Arbitrum, then at that point, if you're getting everything that you need, then maybe it doesn't make sense to build an L3. But because I guess that's where my question starts, is like, how far do we go, right? We have L3s, and then people are going to start building chains on top of chains on top of chains on top of chains. And like, I thought this was done like 2-3 years ago. We started talking about L3s, and then the term kind of went away, and I thought we were done with that, and L2s was going to be it. Now we have L3s, and we're starting to see like more app specific chains. I just don't know how high that goes before that gets a little compromised. Like, at what point do you start like scaling back and saying, hey, maybe I'll just build on an L2, or maybe I'll just build an L3. I don't want to get too far away from the actual like core settlement layer that I really wanted to build on it and have like inherit the security from. Cool. Awesome. Well, Prabal, it's genuinely great to meet you. We've been working with Avail for a long time, but this is the first time I've had a chance to talk to any of the co-founders. So this is a great opportunity for me, and thank you for being here today.
Yeah. Thanks, Feroz, for having me here. I think we of course collaborate quite a bit, and the same, haven't had the opportunity to speak to you before.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess let's start there, since I'm just getting to know you. I think what I was told is that you're the tech genius behind the company, and I feel like you said you have a huge team that works very, very hard on your behalf, and you just kind of guide them and tell them what needs to be done, and try to always get them to do more, which is the job of a good leader. But yeah, so can you tell me a little bit about like what got you into crypto and the Web3, and what led into like Avail for you? Like what was it that made you think like, hey, this is something that I want to be a part of, something that I want to help build?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can. I will give you the long version, and feel free to stop and ask me the abridged one. But I think I was working. I had computer science degree through and through, and then joined my PhD program in 2016. And around that time is when I started working on blockchains. Of course, had been trained in cryptography before, and in computer science in general. Security was always something very dear to me, and that's why I wanted to do research in cryptology and security. Um, Came across blockchains, absolutely amazed me, because this was like, to me it was a confluence of different fields and topics that I have studied over time, or haven't had the chance to study in deep, although I was fascinated by them. For example, game theory and mechanism design, the all those economics things, which I actually went on to attend those classes, understood nothing, and then came back and thought, okay, let me just
Like
focus on.
conceptually, yeah, you get like a little bit of understanding, but not really like real life application
Yeah,
wise. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then even inside computer science, we studied quite a bit. We studied, automata, compiler design. We studied networking. We studied, all different types of things. But I couldn't find a particular field in which you can see all of them being applied for creating something new, and that being also hands-on. Like, for example, like this is one of the major things what keeps me excited, is that every day, where else will you get the chance to work on a low level VM, right? Where else will you get the chance to work on a compiler, on the exact state transition function that is getting verified in a ZK proof? What is the exact cryptographic hash function being used? Encryption function being used? Like, it's almost so standardized everywhere
Yeah.
else that you don't get to work on these low levels, apart from in research. But and that's what kind of that led me to think, okay, let me just go and do some research in blockchains, because it really looks like somewhere I can apply all the kind of my curiosities, and hence some of the knowledge that I had gained.
Actually build something. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it felt very, very interesting. I went there, I studied blockchains, I did some research. I think I had a few different papers. But in 3 to 4 years, I quickly realized that, although I'm talking about all these different things. We worked on fairness, we worked on arbitration through blockchains, we worked on data storage, proofs of retrievability, and so on and so forth. I somehow felt, that I'm not able to. I'm writing about stuff, but who is making them? Like I'm not being able to impact a real world, real person by all this research. Although I'm talking about fascinating new things that could work, but how do I know whether it will work? Right.
Yeah.
So that's when, after 4 years of doing that, I started looking across the industry. I wanted to just go there and be part of some organization who is cutting edge and building something. And that's when I joined Polygon. It was called Matic back then. It was one of the only scaling solutions of Ethereum back then. So
Yep.
in 2020, it was almost fascinating that I could join an organization who are already working on scaling, have something on production which is working, which is making blockchains very, very cheap, very, very easy to work with, and so on. Because at that point in time, Ethereum was costly, Bitcoin was out of reach for a normal person, and
Yep.
hence, it looked like, that it is the perfect opportunity for me to work on the cutting edge, impact lots of real developers and real users to, and build something of value there. So that's how I joined. Again, lots of stories behind how I joined and how I got how I got into the research position. But I joined the research team. There again, confluence of different fields of research that were happening back then. I think
Yep.
one thread was proof of stake. The POS chain was absolutely getting all the traction that we wish to get, and with all that adoption came actually real scaling problems. Right, like everything is great unless it's being used, and at that point in time, the POS chain was starting to get used. Around 2021, we did huge amounts of transaction throughput handling, uh, a lot of spam. Also, how do we filter that? Lots of
Dude, I
things
remember
around.
I think that was a really popular time for a lot of people that are in the industry right now. Like that's, it was DeFi summer, people got into NFTs and like that's when I was introduced a lot. Like 2019, 2020. After trading, I mean Ethereum was obviously the first ecosystem that I got introduced to trade in. And then I started learning, or I was like a little more interested. I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like there's whole new, development like languages, this whole new like tech stacks that I'm not a software engineer, but if I wanted to learn something, I think this is the place to get started because nobody has 20 years of experience in this yet. So like I'm here at the ground level and Polygon was the first place. And I was like, oh, this is an affordable place where I can practice all of my Ethereum type of like build a Solidity contract. I wanted to build like a retail, platform. It was like a loyalty platform for retailers. And I was like, oh, this would be not only in like concept, is it better on Polygon? In production, this would be better on Polygon because every time somebody makes a transaction, you want to record that and reward them. That's going to be way too expensive on ETH. And so I'm getting distracted. But yeah, that was like, I think that's when Polygon really had everybody's mind share and everybody
Yeah.
wanted to like jump in, whether it was trading and engaging on the chain or trying to build and learn. Like that was the place to be. And yeah, I can
Absolutely.
imagine how much attention it got in that time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that kind of helped us, take some idea and see people actually loving it, using it every day, giving us real raw feedback. And it was amazing place to be at, to be very, very honest. Like I
Mhm.
was like I think I was lucky enough to be part of that team from 2020 to 2023. I was there, and absolutely loved the journey there. POS chain, very close to my heart, and they have a stellar team. They still have a very, very good team there, and that's the heartbeat of what they have been able to achieve. So worked quite a bit on that, how to improve that chain, how to make better finality. There was some issues with reorg. There were things about gas pricing, about various different things on chain, and I try to contribute whichever way I can. But of course, hats off to the tech and the other teams, business teams, which made it so successful. I had a very small role to play there. I was also involved in ZK research there, because we were heavily getting into the ZK rollup territory. At that point in time, we were convinced that that the world will be rollup, will be about the way to scale will be about rollups. I mean, if
Yeah.
you read the early papers of Matic, they already had, although they productionized one chain, but the early white papers had the themes of how there will be multiple chains around the single Heimdall chain, and that entire structure was designed in a kind of a roll-up centric manner, right? So
Yep.
that was there. And then there was, apart from proof of stake, the POS chain, there was also the attempt to do Plasma. Plasma was one of the first attempts to do rollups in production. I mean, around
Okay.
2018, 2019, I think Vitalik and others came up with the Plasma design, and Polygon started with that. Actually, Polygon didn't want to do a POS chain; they actually wanted to do a Plasma chain. And while working on Plasma, they realized that although the roll-up vision makes sense, Plasma design itself has various limitations. And then that's why they had to actually pivot to make a POS chain. And at one point
Interesting.
in time, I remember they had both. So you can actually deploy a contract and secure it either by the POS guarantees or by the Plasma guarantees. So Polygon had rich history of coming to one of the first roll-ups kind of designs that we saw in the space. So worked a
Wow.
bit on the Plasma side as well. But while working on Plasma, and this is even before I joined, they realized that data availability will be a key problem behind why Plasma is not successful, right? So they saw that
Hmm.
in this roll-up centric design, the DA will be one of the major components which will need to scale, and there is not a very good answer to how to solve that DA challenge at that point in time. So even when I was joining, one of my first interview questions with Anurag was around the DA and all that. So start also worked on the ideation of Avail, and so on. Of course, the name was not decided. Whether we are going to do that project was not decided, but in late 2020 I started working on the Avail design there. I think in 2021 we started with, I think, only four people, me, Anurag, and two other engineers we borrowed from other teams from for
Wow.
part time in the beginning. And then we started working on the early design of Avail. We had a very good POC. The POC made sense. Things were starting to click. Then we started hiring, and so on. Then the branding came in, bigger teams came in, and so on. And then in I'm probably giving again a long-winded story,
Dude,
but
no, this I really love to hear like the background of how this started. And I didn't realize like so the time you were at Polygon was also mostly spent on really researching and building out the Avail stack and the Avail concept.
yep, absolutely, absolutely. I think in 2020 we started working on it. 2021 we started implementing it with four of us. We started building it. I think in 2022 when we started to heavily, start writing the code, making sure that it works. I had a smallerish team within Polygon and so on. And that's when the Avail name kind of came in, and we started out the outreach and so on. We realized that that Avail being a fundamental DA layer, which is supposed to scale a lot of these rollups, it didn't make sense for us to keep it under only Polygon umbrella, right? Because then it becomes limiting. It becomes Polygon's data availability layer, right?
Yeah.
Where we didn't want to do that, because I mean DA was for us, every time we thought about DA, it was only the first step. We knew that it's not about the DA, it's not about scalability through DA. We knew that once you have the data availability guarantees, which is the core security primitive that is needed for a rollup, then you can do so much more on rollups just because you have the security embedded
Kind of
inside of it.
unlocking Pandora's box at that point. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And then it didn't make sense for us to alienate any other ecosystem, right? So it didn't make sense for us to be only within Polygon. So we wanted a credibly neutral brand, and that's when we spun out in 2023. We made sure that it is credibly neutral, that we can work with Now we work with zk sync, with arbitrum, with op stack,
OP,
with
everybody. Yeah.
polygon. Yeah,
Yeah.
with all the different kinds of stacks that is there. We work with every one of them, and that is great because now we have a Solana VM, a completely different Bitcoin L2, all these Ethereum rollups, a BSC rollup. All these
Mhm.
kind of rollups are starting to work on us, and that is amazing to see right now. I mean, I think things on the rollup sides, people are starting to see value in the rollup centric vision. More and more tooling is now available around it, and so we can see how things are shaping up,
Yeah.
as more and more chains are coming up.
So how do you, I guess, my first question, thank you so much for like that like background. I've been aware of Avail, but like, I'll be completely honest. A data availability layer seems a little boring until you get actually into the tech stack and see what value it provides. Then it's like, oh, this is actually a very core component of these chains. But generally, just looking at it, it's like, oh, it's a data layer, like it's storage, it's cloud storage. This is where I put my
Yeah,
information.
yeah,
So what's the difference? I would say, like, how do you support like app specific chains versus like what's the difference between supporting an L1, L2s, L3s? Like,
yeah.
yeah, first of all, are L3s even really worth it? Does that make sense to you? Because I don't know if like should they just be building L2s? That maybe that's a different question. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think I will try to answer both of them, right? So I think it's about when the roll-ups, when you want to create a sovereign chain of your own. Let's forget roll-ups for a bit. You want to create your own sovereign chain, and the question might be, why do I create a sovereign chain? Right? You might want to create sovereign chains for various different reasons, like why do you want sovereignty of a country, right? Different countries want
yeah,
sovereignty for different kinds of things, right? But in general, it's about making your own individual choices, right? You can make your own security choices, you can make your own user experience choices, and so on and so forth. And I can give small examples about how a chain of your own kind of completely changes the experience that you can provide. So, for example, you want a 200 millisecond confirmation to the user. And if you want to give this on an L1, which is unoptimized, a bland L1 that you are providing, not like in the Solana scale, the kind of optimizations that they have done, which is absolutely top notch there. But
yeah,
if you want to make your own chain, you probably don't have access to those kind of technologies. You have a bland vanilla SDK lying around, with which you can create your own chain. You can hardly customize the block times, right? And
yeah,
even if you suppose you can customize your block times, then about gas fees, you want to create your own gas fees. You might not want to even have a gas fee. You might just want a plain web2 style, DDoS protection. All you want with gas fees is just DDoS protection, right? Why do
yeah.
we have all of these gas fees to begin with? Because we wanted a permissionless system where there was a attack vector called DOS, and we wanted to make sure that not anyone can just come and spam your chain and go
It's
away,
just like spam
because there are
protection. Yeah,
yeah, spam protection,
I think a lot of
because
people
there
don't
was
realize that's one of the core reasons for gas fees is mostly just spam protection.
exactly, right.
Yeah,
And there are so many better ways to do spam protection in traditional web2 systems. It just doesn't make sense for maybe an L1 to do spam protection that way. um, then you and suppose you make all of these choices and you are still okay to run an L1 of your own. You will quickly realize that one of the main problems to running an L1 is basically the bootstrapping cost of security. What do you have to do? You have to go to each one of these validators. You have to ask them to bootstrap security for your own L1, and only when you have significant sufficient security are users going to come. And that is a catch 22. See, the users will not come if there is no security, but the security will also not come to a dead chain, right? A validator will
yeah,
never want to give security to a chain which doesn't have enough users. So those kind of problems we can already see in the Cosmos ecosystem. The Cosmos ecosystem, one of the great technological frameworks that they had, there were you can go and create your own L1 today, but there are many different problems with that. One is the security bootstrapping, but the second is also interoperability, because the chains don't trust each other. They don't know whether the other chain has enough security to be able to trust them. What kind of guarantees will they give when I flow in assets to them and then from back them, and so on. So those are the problems with L1s, right? And then it makes sense for us to create L2s, because in L2s everything becomes very simpler. You need to have, and there are many designs, but let's assume one design for the sake of this argument. Let's say you have to just host one sequencer. This sequencer can do all the spam protection it wants. It's a centralized service. It
Mm-hmm.
can have censorship resistance of the level of Ethereum. It can have gas fees of its own choice or even any other type of spam protection. It can give very, very fast soft confirmations. It can have the entire guarantee of the economic guarantee of Ethereum while just having to host a single service. So this is what gets opened up when you get into the L2 space, right?
Okay.
So L2s make sense, and that is where you now need to think about, okay, what is the security of an L2? Like, what are the main key components that an L2 needs? I will go with the L2 flow, and then I will come to your L3
Y-
question.
yeah.
Uh, but on the L2 side, you would come to realize that there are basically two components of an L2. One is the settlement guarantee, and the other is the data availability guarantee. The DA guarantee shows that anyone who wants to check whether the all the transactions are going on correctly or not, they need to be able to check the ledger.
To access the, yeah.
To access that ledger, you need the DA guarantees. In an optimistic setting, if you do not have the DA guarantee, no one can even claim that there was a false thing happening. So it completely breaks apart the security of optimistic designs if there is not enough DA guarantees. In a ZK design, the the ZK soundness already guarantees that the transactions are not erroneous. Like, no erroneous transaction can be included in a ZK rollup. But
Mm-hmm.
still, in order to be able to spend your wallet balance, you need to be able to construct a transaction, and for which you need to know the ledger. Like, it's one of the analogies I keep giving is that, suppose your bank gives you a report at the end of every year saying that all your balance updates have been done correctly. You will be very happy, but that doesn't mean that you don't need your account statement, right? Without your account statement, you won't know whether your check will bounce or not, right? So it doesn't matter whether all the transactions in the entire bank was done correctly or not.
Or do you, yeah.
And you need the guarantee that what is your current balance, whether you are able to spend your balance, whether you're able to receive money to your account. Those are the guarantees that you want from a bank. And similarly, in an L2 or in a roll up, I should say, the roll up guarantees in a ZK roll up comes from the fact that you're able to have the DA guarantees along with a proof that everything was done correctly. So that's with the DA side. On the
That's a great
settlement,
analogy.
on the settlement side, you need to know that where does the final, like, who is verifying this proof? All the proof that I'm saying, all the proof that
Mm-hmm.
I'm generating, who is the final authority who is verifying it? And then there comes, like, two different options. One is an existing blockchain verifying it. That blockchain is, let's say, Ethereum if you are a L2 on Ethereum, is BSC if you are a L2 on BSC, is Arbitrum if you are an L3 on Arbitrum, right? So that is the only thing that changes when you go from L2, L3, L4, L10. Doesn't matter. All that matters is who is verifying this ledger. Like, I like to talk about rollups as verifiable ledgers, right?
Yeah.
It's like just that. We have servers in the internet all along. They are Everything in Web2 is already there. It scales, it's horizontally scalable, it's vertically scalable. All the properties you need, it can serve 10 billion users, no problem. But none of that is verifiable. None of that is permissionless. None of that is censorship resistant. And rollups of your own give you the ability to control which properties of these you want. Doesn't slap all the properties on you together. That's
Okay.
the difference between running a dApp on an existing chain versus running a chain of your own and
Like
settling
app
onto any other
specific.
chain. App specific.
Okay. That makes sense. So how does it change? Oh no, yeah, no, go ahead, finish, please.
No, no. So, and in this kind of regard, it L2s make sense, L3s make sense, every LX makes sense, as long as you are making independent choices which your settlement layer was not giving. As long as it is that, then it completely makes sense.
Okay. So I think that's, I guess that was the last part is really the most important part, is if you're making independent choices that your settlement layer is not giving you. So if you already have all of the capabilities of what you need within the, say you're building on the L2 because you don't want ETH gas fees and congestion, so you build on Arbitrum, then at that point, if you're getting everything that you need, then maybe it doesn't make sense to build an L3. But because I guess that's where my question starts, is like, how far do we go, right? We have L3s, and then people are going to start building chains on top of chains on top of chains on top of chains. And like, I thought this was done like 2-3 years ago. We started talking about L3s, and then the term kind of went away, and I thought we were done with that, and L2s was going to be it. Now we have L3s, and we're starting to see like more app specific chains. I just don't know how high that goes before that gets a little compromised. Like, at what point do you start like scaling back and saying, hey, maybe I'll just build on an L2, or maybe I'll just build an L3. I don't want to get too far away from the actual like core settlement layer that I really wanted to build on it and have like inherit the security from. But
Yeah,
maybe it doesn't make a difference. I don't know.
yeah. So I would like to answer it slightly differently. Maybe it will look like an attempt to avoid handling it on the head, but I will come back to this property later when we talk about Avail Nexus. But without getting into Avail Nexus right now, to answer this particular question, I would say that at one point in time, the user will not care. The user still doesn't care whether you are an L2, L3, ZK, optimistic, pessimistic, how many like shared sequencer, single sequencer, multiple sequencer, KYC, non KYC, censorship resistant, which gas fee. The user should not care.
Doesn't
And
care.
if they don't care, they should not care. They need to know is what is that application that I am able to use on that chain, which is why I am willing to do all the painful points I need to go to that, right? So if I am thinking about,
True.
I don't know, Hyperliquid has a bridge from Arbitrum, right?
Yep.
And I want to use Hyperliquid. And to like people, I know, you will read blog posts about how Hyperliquid is an L3 on Arbitrum because of XYZ properties, how every chain is a
Yeah.
roll up because of the validating bridge. Like, of course, I am coming from security, so I would love to discuss the nitty gritty details of them. But to be honest, to an end user, I would love to say that please don't care about all of this, right?
It
You
shouldn't
like
matter. Yeah.
Hyperliquid, yeah. You get your assets from anywhere you want, anywhere you have assets. You are just having to pay the price of going from one chain to the other because we are not mature enough to be able to send you to that chain directly, right? So it's an infrastructure problem. It's not the user's problem at all. User is not thinking of it like that. So like then like we actually have to think about all these chains, right? And you are already seeing the rise of that these rollups, they do not have a single bridge, they have multiple bridges. And
Yeah.
it only depends about what do they think as their canonical bridge, because that is an lx plus 1 on that lx chain right? So if they think that the canonical bridge is on ethereum, then they're an L2. If they think the canonical bridge is on Arbitrum, then they're an L3. If they think it is on an L3, then it's an L4. It doesn't matter, right? All it matters, and if you have to make it more and more hops for the user to go to that chain, then you are getting defeated. Then everyone will come back and do the same thing as you said, which is that why don't I come closer to an L2, or I become more to the Ethereum, Solana, or whatever alignment that I
Yeah.
wish to attain through
Yeah.
deploying my bridge, right? So that's the flow that I believe will happen.
Okay. Now, I guess so. The next part I think we had to really I wanted to touch on was multi-chain security models. And so the more we talk about like using bridges, bridges have just been kind of a pain point in our industry for a long time. Again, like I've been in the industry since 2018, 2019, and I can't count on my fingers how many times we've seen bridge exploits. So as much as I love the concept of being able to customize your own chain, your own stack based on your preferences, what's most important to you, your users, your application, where do we draw the line of like it's just too much risk to try to build an L2 or an L3, mainly because like you don't know, there's so many components to trying to build it and getting people's assets over there that now you are responsible for potentially something that could lose people's funds. And that's it. Like Hyperliquid is a great example, right? Like there's so much money flowing into Hyperliquid. Like how can you trust that this bridge is not going to be exploited, or using like the way that these chains are built and connected, that there's no flaw in the middle that's going to be exploited and risk the people's funds. Yeah, like what how do you what is I don't even
So
know how to ask the question. Like,
no, no,
is it
I get
riskier
it.
than we think? Like, or do we feel too safe right now, or do we still have that risk?
No, no, no. See, the to be honest, if I'm being very honest, every part of additional infrastructure is a risk. Like I'm talking purely from a non-blockchain, normal security guy. Like the too many, the more parts and knobs that you have,
Hmm.
the harder it becomes to even analyze its security and all that, right?
Yeah.
That is a pure bland explanation of what you just asked. But let me try to again talk about what vision that we see happening, right? And again, I'm not saying it is there today, I'm not saying it is going to happen in the next 1 year, but this is the vision that we have when we think of the multi-chain world. We think that most of these rollups are going to be ZK rollups, right? And we are again and again going to see that the guarantees are going to be provable. Now, it is important to understand that you cannot make verifiable internet without provable pieces of tech, right? All this vision that we are talking about and making things all verifiable servers, as I myself claimed, it's not possible if it is not provable on the other side, right? So right
Yeah.
now what we are doing is we are taking optimistic routes, and that is great because they let people use it. They have guarantees which are very very good, and under the assumption that there is at least one honest guy, you can actually have very very high levels of guarantees, right? Now if you think that they are provable pieces of technology, then bridging is not that problematic. Bridging becomes problematic when there are middlemen, or there are varying different kind of security assumptions lying all around, right? So for
Okay.
example, if like there are many ways to bridge. One of the major you know things that we see today are multi-sig bridges, and multi-sig
Hmm.
bridges are problematic because we have seen how many times multi-sigs are compromised because of social engineering attack, because of a front end exploit. I mean, everyday new thing, right? That a multi-sig got hacked because payload was forged, and that has nothing to do with the multi-sig people being dishonest, right?
Yeah.
But if you have verifiable, like if you have a ZK proof that the entirety of the chain and the view of the blockchain is correct, then under the assumption that the ZK proof is valid, then it's completely non-fallible, right? Now you can say that now you bring another assumption. You bring that assumption that the ZK proof is infallible. What if there is a bug? How many years have we seen ZK proofs coming? And that is true, but
That's a good
that's why you
question.
will
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why you will see that there are multiple. You can notch it up. You can notch it up by saying like, what if my password gets compromised? Then you have 2FA. You create 2FA because if your password gets compromised, you have a second order of security. And the same things are happening in all production grade systems where you take a ZK proof, but you also have probably a a TE proof from behind, right? And we are increasingly seeing that as
Yeah.
ZK adoption will grow, the confidence in ZK will also grow, but there will always be second order security that people are going to put, because someday one esoteric curve gets exploited. You cannot let your entire infrastructure burn to the ground and die, right? So those kind of things we will keep on seeing, but largely it's not getting easier. But all I'm trying to say is, if it is verifiable, and that is essentially why you should build a rollup and not an L1, because rollups are more and more verifiable ledgers. And once you have an internet, if you see internet applications as just a network of verifiable ledgers, then anyone can verify someone else's ledger and interact with it without having to think which is the settlement layer, who are they talking to, where does it settle, what is their DA. You need two guarantees, as I mentioned. One, that the data is available, and the second, that the ledger is not corrupted. How do you check that the data is available? You run a light client of something like Avail. We make sure that Avail is verifiable on your smartwatch. That is the level of security
Oh,
that we
wow.
want to provide. And after that, all you need is to verify one ZK proof. How much time does it take to sample? It takes I think less than 50 millisecond to do a verification once you have 10 samples, because you only need to take 10 samples, irrespective of whether you have 1 MB to verify, 10 MB to verify, 100 MB to verify. It doesn't matter. You only need 10 samples.
You just need the
And if
samples.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, it's only about the samples. And then if you have done 50 millisecond worth of work, how much time does it take to verify another ZK proof? Around 60, 70, 100 millisecond of time, another, right? So within 200 millisecond of time, and that is on a very, very resource constrained device, you are able to verify the entire state of this ledger being correctly
Mhm.
updated, completely available. And then you do not need to worry about where is it settling. Is it an L3? Is it an L4, L100? You don't care.
None of that
You
matters.
just,
Okay.
yeah, none of that matters.
So it's not, it
So
sounds more complex than it actually is once it comes down to verifiability.
exactly. Like, but the problem right now is that we haven't been like, we are somewhere in the middle, right? And it's always chaotic in the middle. I can come here and talk about, all this big, big vision, but it's chaotic because right now some are ZK proofs, some are even ZK
Mhm.
proofs. None of the stacks among the 3 to 4 popular stacks that are there who are making ZK rollups, none of
Yeah.
them have the same standard. One it gives proofs in type of type A, the other gives a proof of type B, the other gives a proof of type C. On optimistic, some people have fraud proofs, some people do not have fraud proofs. Even in the fraud proofs, some people have a 7-day challenge, some have a 3.5-day challenge. There are different fraud proof mechanisms. Some are one shot, some are multiple shots. Then there are newer improvements, and this will happen. This will happen because this is not a mature tech. You cannot talk
Yeah.
about standardizing SSL if there was not 20, 30 years of cryptography research which preceded it. Because there is not such a, and we are trying to break things fast and make things absolutely cutting edge, there is always going to be
Mhm.
this problem. And we are having to suffer because of that. But there is a much, much better future which is coming because of the work that we are doing today.
That's a great vision. I think a lot of times, we say, building things, requires breaking things, right? Like I call it, it's like building a plane in the sky. Like we're moving so fast, and there's so many things happening on chain that we have no choice but to experiment in live spaces, and like this is really how we learn. This is how we make our tech better. and really push the entire industry forward. Is like we got to take some risks.
And that is why this is so interesting. Like the thing that I started with, right, that all these like components that you can contribute upon, it wouldn't have
Mhm.
been the case if things was mature. It was, 30 years, 40 years
Yeah,
of research. Then where will a new guy with a new idea be able to implement? They're able to
yeah,
implement and do stuff because it's so experimental. And that is one of the best things, right? Like, when I came in, I had 0 years of experience, but nobody actually, said, like, you are of no value because you have no new experience, right? So people come with their own ideas, and people only value them for their ideas, not because, they are old, they are more educated, they have a degree, they have, I don't know, gray hair or whatever, right? So it doesn't
yeah.
really matter.
That's actually one thing that I do love about this industry, and that's one thing I've talked about quite a bit too. Is no matter what you're doing right now, there's an opportunity for you to learn, for you to solve a problem in another industry, in another area, using the tech that's being built here actively every day, right? Like you don't need to be very experienced in blockchain. You just need to have seen a problem in the real world anywhere that you want to try to solve, that this tech can be applied to. If you see a way to solve a problem using this new technology, like you could be a pioneer in this space. You can build some stuff. Like this is a very open ecosystem for people to come in,
Absolutely.
learn, experiment and, break things. Like have some fun and make some mistakes, experiment a little bit. Like that's really what I love about this space. And I think I this is probably one of the best conversations I've had, just because you're very passionate about what you do, and I can feel that like coming through the screen. So I'm really glad that we were able to hop on and you can like really break down not only security, like not just like the boring tech stuff, but also like conceptually why this matters and kind of where we're headed. I do want to touch on, you mentioned Avail Nexus. So like I know Avail as just like Avail DA, right? Like we have you guys in our rollup stack. If people build, like you said, Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync, Polygon CDK, whatever stack they're using to build a chain, they can use Avail as their data availability layer. But it's actually more complicated than just like Avail DA. There's multiple pieces to it. So can you explain to me, as like a noob? I told you I'm not a software engineer. I'm just a blockchain nerd. So can you explain like what the different pieces of Avail are and how they work together? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
So
not trying to get too commercially. I really want to learn.
yeah. So again, I will just extend that answer, right? That what are we trying to do with Avail is not just about, being able to serve DA, right? That was
Hmm.
never the ambition, as I mentioned earlier. And right now we are able to see what kind of a roll-up centric thing, where are the things that is breaking. It's breaking because of fragmentation, right? The
Hmm.
existing problems that you talked about, the problem that, you are having to bridge, and someone is having to think about how to bridge, whether that bridge is secure, and what happens if the bridge gets hacked. These are exactly the problems of getting a fragmented experience, because there are so many chains. There is already a chain fatigue, right? That you
Yeah.
ask a person. Previously, a new chain was a rare thing, and right now, people, you go to someone and say that, there's a new chain, they're like, another RPC on my wallet that I need to add to, another bridge that I need to figure out about, whether does it support this application, does it support that bridge. Those are the kind of questions that you are having to answer because of this fragmentation. We had originally always thought, what does this experience look like? We want to make sure that a rollup which builds on Avail does not have to think about how the first user comes on board, how the first application comes on board, and how exactly does the economic bootstrapping kind of work. Like, if you think about it, how does a rollup accrue any value? One, it has to attract users. Second, it has to attract capital. Attracting capital and users both, need some kind of financial incentives, and social capital all work together, right? So we were thinking, like, how can we contribute to that experience? And that's where, we had Avail Nexus. Nexus is a way for users to not to have to think about which chain they're interacting with. They only want to know this is the application. You go to that application, you are able to get your funds flowing all across the ecosystem wherever your funds are, in whichever like in whichever asset balances that they are staying in. We want to bring those assets, clearly show that which bridges we are using, what kind of things that we are using. They don't have to take on that risk. All they have to take on is that there is a solver, they will give them the funds. They don't need to care about how exactly the bridging takes place. They get the funds, they use the application, they be happy, they stay happy, right? So that is the entire flow that we are going to enable through Nexus. And that is important because a user experience cannot be fragmented because the application is deployed on a new chain which the user have not interacted with. That is not how it works, right? Basically, we want to make sure that every application specific chain or chains on new improved application environments can actually be used without the user having to think about it. The exact same problem that I was talking to you earlier.
Yeah.
How do we want to do it? We start with the liquidity based aspect, but as I said, these are verifiable ledgers. So all you need to do is basically on one ledger, which is your chain, you want to verify the other ledger. And for that, what do? You take that proof, you verify that proof, you're happy. This is what we are trying to enable through Nexus. We are creating a proof aggregation engine on the back end, which will take all these proofs, aggregate it, make it a one-shot proof so that all the interactions become more and more verifiable. To do that, right now, neither are all rollup ZK provable, nor are ZK proofs that cheap that every user can do it. So we have to amortize experiences, right? So what we do is we use the liquidity based bridging, we get the user what they want, and then the solvers, they do the bridging through Avail Nexus or through any other existing bridge that they want to use. We are not here to enforce that you need to use this or that. We just want to enable this experience. And this can be a roll up beyond Avail ecosystem. We do not want to create more walled gardens. We think that we have basically there's a very small number of users and we keep fighting amongst one another. It is not at all helping. We want to make sure that user, no matter what their alignment is, no matter what kind of assets they have, no matter which chain they reside on, we want to enable more and more of the inflow and outflow of these assets, just like web 2 works. In on a web 2, you do not think like where does a redirection go from which server to which server. If I am using Facebook, whether the backend video is being fetched from a Facebook server or from a different server, all you care is that your experience stays the same. You do not
Yeah.
even care whether the Facebook server is a single one or hundreds of them, is in your basement or somewhere just in the opposite end of your planet. It just doesn't matter. No one cares. As long as it
Yeah.
is fast, is it something useful, it is getting some emotional invocation done, I
So
think
yeah,
people are happy with applications.
yeah, as long as I'm getting what I wanted to get out of it, it really doesn't matter how it's happening on the back end. Which
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, that's been like a core concern for a lot of people in our industry. Is, we've been talking about interoperability for years. It just kind of became a buzzword at some point, and that's really where like bridges, and then it turned into communication layers. Instead of just a bridge, we need interoperable, like cross chain communication protocols, and kind of stepping up what a bridge really provides, other than just like tokens moving from one chain to another. And so that's kind of what it sounds like Nexus basically is. It's just that layer for interoperability, where people don't have to worry about how things are happening or how I'm getting my funds from here to here. I just know that I have funds here, and I know I want to
Yes.
use this app. Well, just help me do that and not have to worry about
Exactly.
anything else, and I'm happy.
Exactly, exactly. And then on Fusion, just to finish that question that you
Yeah.
asked, on Fusion we are trying to provide multi-asset security to Avail, but also to all these rollups. These rollups currently are being judged by their TVL, by the amount of assets that they handle. So how can we bootstrap that economic guarantee, bootstrap their economic activity, make sure that they have enough economic bootstrapping that they need in order to make users depend on it, flow in more funds, get the activity happening, get the economy rolling. That is the intention with Fusion. That is, again, we are going to very soon come up with more and more of uh, information around how Nexus is going to work, and we are also going to show a lot of demos in the next 2 to 4 weeks about how the Nexus would shape up to be. And then, of course, in Fusion also, we are going to release a white paper about all the details about how Fusion is going to work.
Okay, so we still got some stuff on the horizon that's going to be dropped. It's not quite released yet. Okay, cool. Well, then we'll have to make sure we release this episode in the next week, so we still have some alpha before you start dropping all the knowledge in the public domain. Um, Dude, that's thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing those with me. Like, I knew Avail was going through some like evolution, like you guys were adding some additional pieces to just being the data availability layer. But it's really cool to like get more of a layman's explanation from you, and I'm sure our listeners, which we generally don't have like the most like development heavy listeners. So I think this is going to be a great episode for people to really learn a little bit more about how some of this interoperability works, what matters, what doesn't, and really what part that Avail plays. And especially, spinning out of Polygon, like everybody knew this was going to be something very crucial to the ecosystem. And we're starting to see like the impact of interoperability and data availability, and why it matters as we see this proliferation of chains. Like, some people are kind of exhausted by how many new chains there are, but there are also some very valuable things that are coming out of this new ecosystem of chains being launched. So that's really cool. I actually wanted to ask, and this is off topic for sure, but I think you're the first person I've had, the first guest I've had that's based in India. Who's, I mean, you came from Polygon, which is very like Indian, started program, blockchain company, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it. And being like South Asian, that it's something that was like really exciting for me. I was like, yo, this is like, I all of my friends and family are from India and Pakistan, and to see, like, I know we have a lot of engineers, but to see something so massive that has such high adoption, and like to see this innovation coming out of India was really, really exciting. And this was 5 6 years ago. So just curious, from like a personal standpoint, how have you seen the evolution of like blockchain development and that ecosystem within India, within the subcontinent? Have things changed a lot? Has there been more funding and more projects flowing out of there? Like, what's changed in that aspect, just in your opinion?
I think a lot has changed and a lot is yet to change. A
Yeah.
lot has changed in terms of mindshare and how Indian people perceive blockchains, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, I think in that entire subcontinent, like, we are famous for all the wrong reasons in some sense, because of the various amounts of negative news that keeps popping up. It's always the same, probably in everywhere else as well. But I think as a subcontinent, we love all the negativity around, so I think they get highlighted quite a bit more. But over time, I've seen that more and more developers are curious, more and more developers are actually wanting to get into this industry. They are getting the help that they needed, because let's be honest, like, I was privileged enough to actually be able to study blockchains at some of the premier universities there, and that's why I got the opportunity to work at all of this. But I'm very, very sure that, like, almost 80% of the people and the young engineers out there are more smarter than me, and they probably are just not having the right opportunity or the right exposure to get into this field, which is slowly changing. The second is, I think, capital, right? I mean, you can be all the, like, you can have all the different skills, but if you do not have a place to shine, you do not get the funding to actually do something of your own, then it is not that helpful. I think there is still things have to improve a bit more, but more and more, breakaway organizations are getting formed in and around India and that subcontinent, which is again very very good to see. I would love to see, not just Polygon and a few others who have been able to, you know, actually be mentioned in the same breath as you did, but I want there to be too many to count, right? Because I know that even all across the blockchain industry we have lots of Indians working behind the scenes, lots of
Hmm.
Pakistani, lots of entire subcontinent and Southeast Asia. We are working quite
Yeah,
a bit, but apart from a few different teams, not a lot of them has been able to make a lot of good social capital that they
a
have been
lot of
able to
noise.
form. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think a lot has to still happen, but things are already going great. More and more universities are teaching blockchains, and more universities are open to the idea of people working on it. I think even the governments are getting a bit better, and again macros are always helping with all
yeah.
this decision making. But things are improving, but there is still some way to go. I would not be
Still a
complacent
ways
at
to
this
go.
point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been really exciting. And like I said, I just was just curious. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while. I very recently went to Token 2049 in Dubai, and that was the first place. Generally my conferences are more within the United States and the West, and very recently I started going to conferences in Asia a little bit more. So even Token 2049 last year in Singapore, this year in Dubai. We had DevCon in Thailand last year. So it's been places that are a lot more accessible to people from the subcontinent. It's much harder to get visas for the US than it is to go to Thailand or to Singapore. And so I started to like meet a lot more Indian, Pakistani, like South Asian, Southeast Asian founders, and just developers, engineers, people that are interested in the space, family funds that are starting to invest more in the space. And you're starting to see that proliferate a lot more, and you're starting to see more of the culture in the space. Even on crypto Twitter, you're starting to see it a little bit more. People are more open about who they are. They've been anonymous, and they're like, "Oh, actually, I'm
Yes.
I'm Indian, bro. Like I'm brown too,"
Yeah.
which it's
Yeah.
really cool to see that like we're kind of coming out of hiding, and you're seeing a lot more attention being put on the people building behind the scenes, and it's great to see that attention going to like building more of that cultural awareness of like we're all over the world building this stuff. Like this is not just the people with the money in the West building. It's people all over the world that have traditionally not maybe gotten the same spotlight and the same stage presence. And now that's starting to change a lot because it's more about what you're building and not about who you are, where you're from. And a lot of that capital flows anonymously to the most successful ecosystems. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where those people are from. And so it's exciting to see that opportunity become a little bit more fair in that sense, and
Yeah.
just see more representation. Like it's pretty
Yeah.
dope.
And also, like what we were mentioning in the beginning, right, that this industry is so cool because of its nature to like open both arms and welcome people without prejudice. I think I love that aspect of this industry. I would love it to stay that way, even if it matures to more and more
Yeah,
mainstream and so on. But I would love it to be that way. And as you mentioned, it's so cool to see that people are not having to hide their identity, that they are more open about it, and people being receptive to that, which is also good.
yeah. Okay, man. I'll be honest. This has probably been one of the longest recorded episodes of Chain Reaction. So this is going to be. I think this is going to be great. We'll cut a bunch of little short form clips to throw out there and promote it, and hopefully people stay for the whole conversation because genuinely I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. Um, to end it off, I want to ask if you have one of two questions. I normally ask for a future vision. I've kind of been shifting that into whether you have a future vision for Avail, Web3 ecosystem. I mean, we've been talking about sovereign rollups and scaling a lot. Or if you have a hot take that you really just want to like get off your chest and you want to start some stuff. Um,
I don't
no
know,
hot
like
takes?
I think yesterday I was just try to be as honest as possible. Yesterday we saw a lot about the hack, and I think we need to get away from it, right? In the sense that we cannot be sustainable as an industry if we keep seeing hacks of this magnitude so often. And it has nothing to do with ecosystem, VM, language, who they are, or it doesn't just matter. I think
Doesn't matter.
collectively, yeah, we just have to do better. Like the problem is that, as we say, we are being experimental, we are trying to break fast, we are trying to do move so fast that we are bound to break stuff. But i think I think if people think that there is a single blockchain or a single community or a single ecosystem which can save them from such exploits, they are being wrong. So, like, we need to create more and more safeguards for the normal users so that something like this never happens. Like, at the end of the day, I think, uh, whether it was good or bad, that's a debatable topic. But I think at the end of the day, the validators had to censor some of these transactions and such, which is exactly social consensus, right? And you cannot
Yeah.
avoid social consensus when things, you need to draw the line somewhere. Either you follow it to the T, or you draw the line much ahead. I think you cannot just have the normal user having to drain because it was none of their fault.
That's yeah. I think that's a big. I was gonna say that's not really a hot take, that we need to get more secure and stop these, multiple $100 million to multi-billion-dollar hacks. Like, I don't think that in itself is a hot take, but how we protect from that to, becomes a little bit more permissioned or a little bit more centralized, or, we assert a little bit more control over something that the original ethos was to be fully permissionless, fully
Yeah,
decentralized, right? Like,
yeah,
so like yeah, I think you make a very good point of like, where do we draw that line? We kind of have to come to a social consensus of, we do need to be safe. We need to make sure that we trust it and that people can trust their money in these ecosystems and in these platforms before we continue to like just barrel down this path head first without stopping to think about the long-term implications. Because like this money, to a lot of us, like, I didn't lose $200 million, so like maybe it doesn't quite affect me as much, but
mhm,
that is very real money going from someone to someone else. And so
yeah,
like that has very wide ranging implications in the long run. And yeah, I think you make a very good point. It's hopefully we can come to some sort of consensus of like, where do we draw that line so that we can still get the benefits of this tech that we really love, but while we're also making sure that we have a little bit more security so that we can really get that adoption, right? Like, everybody talks about
yeah,
onboarding the next billion users, but like,
yeah.
we can't do that with $250 million hacks happening just left and right.
Yeah, and we need more credibility. Like, I think this is a big blow. Like, as I mentioned, right? I mean, these are the news which gets covered, and we are talking
Yeah.
about, now real world assets are starting to flow, and I mean, can you imagine a real world asset just vanishing and going to a hacker because of a code bug? I mean, I don't think they will ever let it be that way. So we have to be like asking ourselves, like, you know either we go full permissionless, you don't draw the line anywhere and let the code speak for itself, or you draw the line much ahead. Like, you cannot be, after 200 million. It's, I mean, I'm happy that they did it, but I'm saying, like, why not do it much earlier, right? Why not
Yeah.
have a kill switch? I do not know. And again, as Avail, it's hard for me to say, because people will say that, are you then becoming so permissioned and you want to censor and so on? It's not really that. I think we need more safeguards, we need more 2FAs and things like that, which I covered earlier, during our conversation.
Fair enough. I think that's a sufficiently hot take. Not too hot, but hot enough. I appreciate you. All right, before we hop off, if you can just tell our listeners where they can find more information about Avail, where they can find you. I don't know if you're public on Twitter and you like people
Yeah,
following you and stuff, but yeah, if you can share where people can find you and follow you, that'd be great.
yeah. I think I have been told by my internal team that I'm not too active on Twitter, and that has been a constant complaint. So I don't know how much I can keep you entertained with these hot takes on Twitter. But my Twitter handle is Prabal Banerjee, just the name altogether. Avail project is the Twitter handle of Avail. Follow us and stay tuned to our updates. Availproject.org is the website. Feel free to drop in. And anytime if you want to connect, let's chat on DMs.
Dude, awesome. Man, Prabal, thank you so much. Genuinely, it was great meeting you today. This has been a great conversation. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime. Maybe we'll catch you at a conference and then record an in-person episode sometime soon.
Sure, sure, sure. Looking forward to that. Thanks a lot for having me here. It
Uh,
was really fun.
Dude, absolutely, man. Thank you again. I know it's late for you over there, so I appreciate you staying up late for me. Have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye
All right.
bye.
Thanks. Bye.